This is your video for Section 3 review. We are looking at macro mod Section 3, and it starts with circular flow. So if you recall, circular flow, like your national accounts, these kinds of things, not going to be on the AP test. When you do a simple circular flow model, I don't know if I would have one of these on the test either, as you're looking at the AP people. I mean, I can't say that wouldn't be on there, but potentially they might say, hey, this is what it looks like, and could we get what's your GDP or something like that. If you look at a basic circular flow model, they could give you something like this and be like, here's some numbers, etc. Remember, you're probably going to be looking for either GDP down here or your wages, profit, interest, and rent there. I can't rule it out. Doubt if it would be on there. Um, when you're looking at GDP, remember GDP are all those things that are the final goods in production. We don't want to double count, so those intermediate goods are not if they're used in the processing of some final good. For example, it tells you there the car windshield, that doesn't get counted because it gets counted as part of the car. Now, when you have your car windshield replaced, that's different. But when it's sold as the car, then you don't count that good. Here's your different approaches, right? So your GDP, CIG, X minus M there, and then you got your wages, interest, rent, and profit. The value added approach, again, nice to know, but can't really see that being on the test. As you look at GDP, remember personal consumption is by far the biggest percentage. Almost 70% of us is just us spending, right? That's what the GDP is. Investment is businesses and what they're doing, and then government purchases kind of round out most of it. We do have net exports, and they can be negative if, like usually the United States, getting a little more goods coming in than going out. So that might be a negative number there. That adds up to our total GDP. As you're looking at, again, what's not included, remember too, transfer payments not included. Transfer payments is money that's just like Social Security or welfare or something like that. It's going from one group to another, but we're not, like that doesn't get counted as new money. It just is money being moved. So these were all things we looked at in the past. Section 11, really when you're talking about nominal versus real, remember nominal is all the goods and services, and then real is dealing with no inflation going on. So as we look at that, we definitely want to make sure that we know what our real GDP is. So you take that quantity given in a year, and then you have to compare it to some base year, and we did problems like this. So as you look at this, could you get one of these problems on the AP test? Yeah, I think you could. If you're looking at, they could give you, especially in that first one where there's like two parts to it, they could give you something like this where they're like, okay, if this is the nominal GDP and this is real, what is the real GDP or what's the percent of interest or inflation, I should say, not interest, that's happening here. You could get something like that. Again, though, because you have all the ability to have those definitions and formulas, I don't know if they'll put it on there or not. They might have to, they might put it on there and then have you explain, well, this is what I did. How did I get these numbers and how did that all happen? GDP per capita is the best one, but remember you're just taking your GDP, your real GDP per capita is the best one, and you're just taking that real GDP and then dividing it by how many people are out there. Sometimes bad things seem good, like natural disasters, etc. Sometimes good things are bad, like volunteering. Um, Here's your unemployment, employment, discouraged workers, labor force. Again, I'd have maybe these definitions at the ready, but I don't know if I would spend a ton of time looking at that either. Um, they could give you a problem where calculate out, hey, what's the number of unemployed workers or what's the percentage of unemployment. But because you have all the definitions, I feel like they're not going to do that to you because you'd be able to just plug it in and go. So have those at the ready in case. As you're looking at that, I don't know if there's anything in here really. Again, looking at unemployment. Um, If you're looking at, frictional unemployment, remember that's kind of probably the best one because people are just moving to a different job. As you look at structural unemployment, there's something wrong with like the economy basically, or there's something happening in the economy that's not good. Um, More people are trying to seek out those jobs than are there. And when you have the last one besides structural unemployment, the natural rate of unemployment, which can lead to not lead, but the cyclical unemployment. That's just dealing with your business cycle and when things are going like in that negative side of the business cycle. So then you're saying, oh, I don't have these employees because my the whole economy is in a downturn. Right now, we got people laid off all over the place because of the virus, and you're headed towards sort of a recession, depression type thing, and of course that's going to be your cyclical unemployment. It's not. It's you're just going down because everybody's going down, right? So it's the whole business cycles um, having that negative thing. So when you look at your actual unemployment, it's that natural rate of unemployment plus the cyclical from the business cycle added in. What can happen or change? We've had things change that. Again, I don't think any of this stuff would be on the test simply because it's kind of nice to know stuff, and I don't know how they would ask you a question about it. Maybe to explain how you could maybe get more people employed or something along those lines, maybe. Um, Inflation, you do have your inflation rates. Remember, these are things like your shoe leather costs and menu costs and unit of accounts. Go through those examples. I don't think that stuff would be on the test either. I feel like if I was putting something on the test, I'm probably going to go with your aggregate supply, aggregate demand, recessionary gap, inflationary gap, something along those lines. Maybe if you were trying to do something where it would calculate inflation, that might be something on a smaller question, but who knows what they're going to do from you or to you. The winners and losers from inflation, remember, if a borrower borrows money and then all of a sudden unanticipated inflation happens, the borrower pays back with like basically less valuable money, so the borrower is going to win in that instance. So always good to know that one too. These were some examples of winners and losers from inflation. Remember, disinflation is like bringing down that inflation rate, and that is really what we don't want to see. We don't want to see disinflation because when people start paying less for goods, then they stop buying. And as soon as they stop buying, that's when we get in that cycle of, well, maybe it'll be lesser tomorrow. And then they still don't buy and still don't buy and still don't buy. And that's when you start seeing recessions happen. This last one here, talking about your market basket of goods. When we did this, we were like, hey, make your own market basket, use a price index to calculate out, and then you should be able to get your inflation rate from that. CPI is the most common used, and we made our own little CPI, and then we did, the current year divided by the base year, and then we took like a different year divided by the base year, see what the numbers are, and then you can see what the percent of inflation would be. The producer price index, you could use that too. And the last one was the GDP deflator. Same thing, except you're taking nominal divided by real to get your GDP deflator, and then you're calculating out that way. So one of them is going to be, because your nominal is not adjusted for inflation and real is, you should be able to figure out what the inflation rate is from your GDP deflator. But the most commonly used one is going to be let's CPI. So you can use that GDP deflator. It doesn't really matter, but if you want to use the CPI one, that's probably the most common one that would be given on a test. Review that section, see what you think. Again, if I was going to do something, if I was given the test, I'd probably say I probably wouldn't do a circular flow problem. Maybe I would have a problem where it's going to have you calculate like inflation rates or something like that. So be able to use CPI and inflation, but as long as you have all those formulas kind of sitting on maybe a note card or something, and then just say, oh, there it is. And if they ask you that question, whip out that note card so you can just be like, oh yeah, I want to make sure I calculate it right. and explain how you got that. Hopefully that helps. Till next time.